So today I'm going to talk about pious. I was listening to a very good lecture by Maharaj Shanto from the Hare Krishna movement or Krishna conscious movement, and I wanted to talk about shamanism, how shamanism can be brought into the context as well. When we go and take food, we just take it now. We've really lost our connection to consciousness. Let's just not use the word God, let's just say consciousness. And we just go and we see a nice fruit and we just go, right, I'll have that. And this, I reckon, is the Goldilocks syndrome. The Goldilocks syndrome is where you go to a house, you see food, and without asking, you take it. And what happens? The big bears, I think they were bears, they came back, didn't they? And they were like, where's my porridge? And they got angry. So if you take things that aren't yours, people get angry. And if people give you things, then you should say thank you. It's like, sorry, my English is really bad now. Replicating or reciprocity. I forget what the word is. And so reciprocate. That's the word. Sorry, my English is getting worse. It's the Kali Yuga. So you need to reciprocate. But what is reciprocation? Well, reciprocation is an exchange of energy, isn't it? You don't always have to give the same thing that someone gives you back to someone else. And it doesn't always have to be physical. You know, if somebody gives you something, you could help them in some manner. You could give them support. And you don't have to always give somebody something because they've given something to you. Just a simple thank you is enough. And what that thank you does is it shows that you appreciate. It shows an acknowledgement. It shows that you are respectful. And so when you cease to be respectful, when you cease to help, then what happens is people don't want to give anymore. So the world that we have is full of abundance. Yeah, it's full of abundance. I'm just going to put the thing down a little bit, I think, so that you can see me a bit better. There we go. So the thing today is about abundance, isn't it? We live in a world which is full of abundance. Well, it was full of abundance. It had a lot of fish in the ocean, but that's gone down. We had a lot of forest, but that's gone down. We had a lot of trees, but that's gone down. We had a lot of animals, but that's gone down. We've got some extinctions going on here and there. The last rhino disappeared, or the last black rhino, whatever it was, disappeared last year. And so our abundance is disappearing. And the abundance that we do have has been poisoned. It's ill, so we can't take it anymore. The rivers are ill. We can't go and drink from there. It's got mercury in there, especially in the Amazon, especially in Latin America, because people are mining. And so mercury and other metals and garbage goes into the water sources. We have this consciousness. Some people call it God, but I don't like saying that word because people get upset and offended, and sometimes quite rightly so. So let's just use the word consciousness. So we have this thing called consciousness that gives things to us, and we acknowledge. A lot of people acknowledge that there is consciousness, but when they take something, they don't say thank you. So there's no longer this connection between human and consciousness. And consciousness is what created the food. If you think in design, if you think the world's been designed, then the object of food surely is to feed humans. So humans can have energy to fulfill the time here on this earth, to learn what they need to learn, or to praise whom they need to praise, in order to grow in a particular conscious way, in order to have a destination which is good for them, where they wish to go. Because obviously you can decide where your destination is when you die. The Christians have a very dualistic ideology about death. You know, you either go to heaven or you go to hell. It's a very unthought out cosmology of the world. But the other ideologies such as Buddhism and Vaishnavism and Hinduism, they've got a much better understanding of the next worlds than what the Western Christian ideology has. God, it's sort of my view. God doesn't really go to you. You've got to sort of go to him. The devil comes to you. The devil comes to you in drugs, it always finds you. The devil comes to you in alcohol, because alcohol is a spirit. That's why it's called spirit. And if you don't believe that, I believe the Arabic word for spirit is gul, which is where I think the name alcohol comes from, alcohol. And I think al means the. And a ghoul obviously is something you put on a church to defend it from evil spirits. So there seems to be some sort of link between, spirits and alcohol and the devil, or whatever you want to call it. The devil probably doesn't exist. It's probably just a separation from God. So things come to find you. Drugs find you. Drugs find young teenagers. They make their way into institutions, schools and universities. They make their way into households. These darker energies, heavier energies, have, if you like, a consciousness of their own, or they're directed. The energy that they symbolize is directed through those energetical streams in the invisible world that a lot of people can't see. And so it's very important, therefore, to go to God. That's what we're supposed to do. We've got the tools and the literature, and we need to go to God. Because consciousness. Because obviously we were put here, for a reason, and we decided to be free. And that freedom is not having someone peering over our shoulder all the time. It's like without a parent. And we all know what happens when we don't have our parents around. We have parties and we do fun and interesting things. And so this earth could be seen as a sort of a party place. If you go to Ibiza, you'll certainly understand, or even Las Vegas, don't go to Saudi Arabia, because there's obviously no party there. But you come here to be free. And part of that freedom is not to have God constantly in your face. And so you have to go to him. And so why should God, if you don't say thank you for the things that you get, which is what Maharaj Shanto said, if you don't say thank you to the Supreme, to consciousness, why would consciousness take an interest in you? And that was something very interesting that he said. Why would consciousness take an interest in you? You need to take an interest in consciousness for consciousness to take an interest in you. So by you connecting to consciousness, consciousness connects to you. If you want to look at it on a more energetical level, that's what I think he might be saying. So in order for the connection to take place to consciousness, an intention has to be sought. And that intention is symbolized by reciprocating thanks and acknowledgement. And when that happens, then more can come into your life. There is more abundance. Abundance is shared. Now, we all know what happens when we don't say thank you. At Christmas, when you're a kid and you don't say thank you to your aunt and your uncle and your grandparents for slipping you £20 or £30 into your Christmas envelope. I don't know if you get letters these days, but anyway, a digital bank transfer or whatever, and you don't say thank you, then what happens is that they don't send it for the next Christmas. Your uncle and aunt, they don't expect a little child to reciprocate that kindness by giving them presents or by giving them money, because the child doesn't have it. In the same way, we as humans don't really have anything on a material level that God wants, or what consciousness wants. What consciousness wants is for us to behave properly, and for us to recognize that he's there, and for us to say thank you. Now, thank you isn't about making other people say thank you. It's not about forcing other people around the dinner table to say their graces. It's not about forcing people to do things that they don't want. The thanks is a personal relationship between you and consciousness. And that's quite important, because you can't force it onto other people. Other people have to come to it through their own pathways. But you can create a mood, if you like, or you can create a sort of a pattern of behavior where you do always thank and acknowledge that there is something bigger than you that gives you what you need in order to carry out the process or processes on this earth plane or dimension or matrix, whatever it is that you might want to think that we're in. And I think that that's actually worship. Worship comes in all sorts of different sizes, doesn't it, really? People go, oh, you've got to worship, you've got to get on your hands, you've got to get on your knees, you've got to get onto church. I don't think so. I think church can be a bit of a waste of time, really. I mean, before churches, do you think God got upset if you didn't go to church? No, church comes from nature. The original church was the stream, wasn't it? It was the bit of water that flowed past your house. It was the creek, wasn't it? And that's where people leave statues. That's where people leave offerings, in those places. So the church or the temple is basically an abstraction or a refinement of nature. And that's why in churches you have a lot of sacred geometry. You have pi and Fibonacci sequence, which is found in nature. It's found in the structure of leaves. And so by using those structures, the idea is to try to get some sort of sacred geometry, which is godly, into the church. But you can go straight to God or straight to consciousness through nature. You can just look around and you can see the greenery. Color has a great magic about it. The sky has a great magic about it. And so connecting to those things, I think, is much more powerful than trying to connect to something in a church. I actually think that churches can deconnect you, because you just got the priest and you've got this quite large structure which can look quite forbearing and quite scary, because a lot of churches are about power, aren't they? It's about power and dominance. The church is, you look at a church and you go, oh, wow, And so the church is a sort of a statement. It's a colonial statement. Churches were built on sacred spots of other people in order to say, our God is more powerful than your God. So the church is a sort of like a weapon, if you like, in some senses. It's about suppressing other people's culture in order to impose your culture on others, which is a highly arrogant thing to do. And that's why a lot of the colonial worlds need to decolonize. They need to clean themselves. However, the pattern of belief has been so programmed into the minds of people. It's now an intergenerational problem where religions and ideologies catered to Western Christian belief are transplanted through generations, and trying to uproot that is very difficult. So you need to reculturalize yourself. You need to go and look for the culture which has been lost. Telling a British person to go back to the Picts. The Picts were the old British people, the Anglo-Saxons or the Anglo-Saxones, the Celts, the Druids. That's our real culture. Our culture is not Christianity. That's a later development which was imposed onto us through fear and panic and force and rape and all sorts of other things, killing witches, murder, torture. So we had our culture taken away, and that needs to be brought back again. And the early Christianity was very mystical. It was you might say shamanic in some senses. It had a lot of Gnosticism attached to it. You've got the pre-Christian and the post-Christian Gnostics. The fight with Valentinus and I forget who the others are called. Valentinus and I forget who it was now. I can't remember who they were. Augustus was later, wasn't he? Irenaeus, I think it was. You got Valentinus and Irenaeus and the Bishop of Lyon and all of those people. And they were all having their little bitch fight, really, killing each other and trying to put each other down. But there were a lot of early Christian ideologies around. I think there was even something called Apollinarianism or something. It's like 42 different mystical traditions. And the current Catholic Church killed them all because it didn't want to have that type of people around it to compete. And so what happened was this mysticism was largely taken out of Christianity, and we were left with quite a hollow ideology. And it's through mysticism, isn't it? It's through mysticism you get direct experiences of God. And there are different ways you can get to God. You can do it through service, you can do it through belief, you can have mystical experiences. And the mystical experiences these days are seen as sort of witchcraft and devil worship and satanic. You know, if you seek to have a direct relationship with God outside of the rules of the religion that you're in, you're classed as a demon. And so a lot of the tools that you could reach God through in mystical experiences have now been decided to be non-appropriate. And what really happens then is the church or the religion manages to get control over you. Even the Hare Krishna do it out in Latin America. They don't like people taking ayahuasca and plant medicines, which give a direct relationship to God through nature. Even though the Hare Krishna or the Vedic god Lord Soma is the god of hallucinogenic plants, isn't he? He's the one that helped a lot of the deities overcome other deities and demons. It was through plant medicine. But because people don't know what Soma actually is, some people think it's a mushroom, some people think it's other things, you're not allowed to take Soma anymore. I don't actually think that Soma perhaps is just one plant. I would have thought Soma is the deity behind any plant that when ingested can link you to higher states of consciousness. So what else am I going to say? So yeah, so when you're in the shamanic traditions, you ask permission to kill an animal. Now, of course, in some traditions you're not allowed to kill animals. The Vedic traditions, the Buddhist traditions, or some Buddhist traditions, the Dalai Lama eats meat. He eats goat. He likes goat. So you have to ask permission from the spirit of the animal. So each animal has an archetypal spirit, and then you also have offices which look after animals. So for instance, you've got an office which looks after land animals, an office which looks after aquatic animals, an office which looks after dangerous animals, an office which looks after vegetarian animals, an office that looks after big animals, an office that looks after small animals. So within the offices, you need to contact the office in order to ask permission, much like in the Vedic spiritual philosophy, where there are different gods. You've got the god Yama, which has the office over, if you like, the underworld. You've got Soma, Lord Soma, which has an office over plants, let's just say. And so these people need to be known, and through mantra or through prayer or through plant medicine, you then contact these people or these offices and you ask for permission. When the permission's granted, you can have it. One of the reasons, the shamanic ideology, is that a lot of diseases and illnesses that are happening to humans is happening because we don't respect animals. And so the office or the demon or whoever it is in charge of the office, he can make humans ill for disrespecting animals, or the archetype of the animal, for instance, can make humans ill. So you can have an attack on a spiritual level. Not everything needs to be on a physical level. If you don't believe in God, then you're not going to, or consciousness, then you're not really going to understand what I'm saying when I talk about things having energies or things having offices. And if you're a Christian with a very limited mind, you're not really going to understand what I have to say either, because the other world is abundant with life form. The other world has more life form than this world does. And there's nothing wrong with, if you can, to come into contact with it through meditation or plant medicines or however it is. Because those plant medicines, in effect, help you connect to nature. And when you connect to nature, you realize nature's importance. And when you realize nature's importance, you start to respect. You start to ask permission. You start to bow down. You start to understand that you are not the higher authority, that there are other higher authorities around. And so you find your place in the world. The scientific cosmology is that humans are at the apex, the pinnacle. We are the best. We are the best that we've ever been through this evolutionary system that we've gone through. It's got rid of all the scum. You know, that Neanderthal scum that came along, all those other scummy human beings that, you know, we humans, Homo sapiens, got rid of. I mean, we got rid of it for the best possible reason, you know, to make sure our genes are nice and pure. Even though it seems that Homo sapiens, you know, had sex with Homo Neanderthal, whatever that's about. But some of us do have Neanderthal genes in us. And I don't think that's quite a bad thing, really. They're probably quite nice people. Maybe to us not good looking, but, you know, you should never judge a book by its cover, should you? I'm quite guilty of judging books by their covers. And everyone does. If no one judged a book by its cover, then we wouldn't have graphic designers, would we? So obviously we're all guilty of the same thing. And what will happen if we don't respect the earth? If we don't respect the earth, if we don't start to say thank you, if we don't acknowledge, the earth doesn't want us to, you know, give her back things, but she would like a ceremony here and there, every now and again, and a pattern of it, a continuous pledge to thank her. She doesn't want, you know, us to give her lots of seeds and stuff like that to eat, but she does need to be recognized, and that creates an energetical language. It creates an energetical conversation. You know, we are now in a conversation with a higher entity or a higher spirit, and that's very important for us to live here. And the problem with science is that science is poisoning everything. Science thinks that it knows best, as science is extremely arrogant. Science separated from spirituality, let's say, in the Enlightenment, against the wishes of some of the most eminent scientists, who were alchemists, by the way. Newton was an alchemist. 1/3 of his library was on occult books, but the science won't tell you that because the science is ashamed. Science wants to judge everything on its terms. Science does judge everything on its terms, and it thinks that its terms are ubiquitous. Well, there are other dimensions, and I don't think the science that we have applies to 5th or 6th or 7th dimensions. You know, science is probably local to the universe that we live in. But I'm not a physicist, so I can't really talk too much on hyperphysics and stuff like that. If you don't respect nature, nature will turn on you. She's done it before. The Tower of Babel. Maybe that was a myth, you know. Maybe that's a myth. Maybe it's not a myth. No, maybe it was real. We think everything's a myth that we can't accept to exist, because we think that people back then didn't have the capacity to build such structures or have such things, and that's another arrogance that we have. If you look at the Vedas, they've got something called Vimayas. I think it's Vimayas or Vimanas. I can't remember. And these are spaceships. They're UFOs, and they even give instruction manuals on how these things were built. They worked on Mercury. If you spin Mercury round, and you spin the Mercury round by putting an electrical current through it. Now, that's not something I've read in a modern physics book. It's something that's come out of very old books. So they had this ability to understand. They had this ability to know. And we can't think that everyone in the past who said something said it as a joke in order to fool people in the future. There's no agenda to sort of write sacred texts to sort of confuse people in 2,000 years' time. You know, there's no scientist at the moment writing fake documents about things that we haven't created, so that people in 3,000 years' time can think that we had all these superstructures when we didn't. Humans aren't really like that. If we if we don't change, then Mother Nature will make us change herself. And that's not something that you want, because that's when the earthquakes come, that's when the fires come, that's when the floods come. And if Mother Nature is God or consciousness, we all know what God gets like in the Old Testament. Good old Sodom and Gomorrah, that must have been like a fun place to be. I wonder where that was. Probably Babylon or something, wasn't it? Where's Babylon now? Middle East, isn't it? Yeah, you wouldn't get away with that stuff today, would you? If you could go on a holiday, if you could go on if the time machines existed, I'm sure lots of people, instead of going to Vegas and Amsterdam, would probably go back to Sodom and Gomorrah, wouldn't they, for their premarital party. Get it out of the system before you have to be with someone for the rest of your life. Really good way to start the relationship off, that, isn't it? Stag night in Sodom and Gomorrah. Where are you going, mate, for your stag? Sodom. Where are you going? Gomorrah. Am I invited? Yeah. Yeah, bring the extra thick condoms. They got diseases, back then that we don't have today, It was that good. So you got to be careful of nature, because nature is conscious. She does have a mind. But we as humans, we're just so arrogant. Just because nature doesn't think how we think she's stupid. Yeah, just because a dolphin doesn't think how we think it's stupid. We think it's less. Because you can't write a song, because you can't do mathematics, you're stupid, That's what you're like, you're stupid, yeah? Because we judge you on human terms. Well, imagine if humans started to judge humans on angel terms, Angels are perfect beings, aren't they? Looking at Earth, look at all that rape and violence and pillaging and all that stuff that's going on. These people are terrible, We did less raping and pillaging 2,000 years ago in jungles, or 5,000 years ago, than we do today. But today we're civilized. Yeah. The symbolism of civilization is to invade countries for oil and to destroy their culture. That's what civilization is. And you do it under the thin veneer of democracy, We're the government, we're going to attack you and blow up all your culture. We don't care if it's human culture and it's 5,000 years old. We were voted in by the people through democracy, so therefore we can do it, Doesn't matter that all the people are stupid that voted us in. All the people are bloody dunces that voted us in. That doesn't matter. What matters is that democracy voted us in, because that gives us the authority to do what we want. And the people suffer from apathy, don't they? Oh, well, we'll let them do that. We don't care. As long as we've got Netflix, who cares? Yeah. What's on tonight, darling? Game of Thrones. All right. Well, I can't really be bothered to do a protest about those kids having their arms blown off. It's the finale tonight. Doesn't really matter, does it? As long as I've got my Netflix. Did you get the microwave chicken tikka curry? Yes, darling, I did. Oh, excellent. I'm really not going out now to defend those poor children that my country's blowing up with the taxes that I pay from the hard work that I do. That's laziness. That's a sin. Yeah, that's a sin. It's a sin to pay taxes. It's a spiritual sin. It's a spiritual sin to pay taxes and know that they're using those taxes to do bad things and to kill people, and to not get angry or do anything about it. St. Thomas Aquinas, there's just cause for anger, falsely given to St. Chrysostom, but it was actually an Aquinas ideology or theology, that. Just cause to be angry. You are allowed to be angry if somebody is sinning. Yeah, if you see someone is sinning, you've got just cause to be angry. Anger is not a sin, apparently, in some cases. But that's a theological argument I don't want to get into at the moment. So what we're seeing is that technology is trying to get a wedge between people and nature. Technology wants a big wedge to be made. And the reason why it wants that to happen is so that we start to go towards a technological God instead of a natural God. Now, nature isn't God, strictly speaking, even though God invented it and everything is God. But let's just not go down that rabbit hole for a minute. Let's just say, look, nature's not God, but it has a capacity to get you to God. Yeah, the praise of nature, of streams, of rivers, of meadows, of forests, of jungles, of animals, the beauty that nature has, recognizing that beauty, sitting in it, is a much higher vibration than technology. It's a much higher vibration than technology. And so what you need to do is not allow that wedge to happen. And so when technology, the creation of technology makes nature ill. When you take the cadmiums from the soils and then dump them all over food, when you use pesticides, when nature gets fed up and says, look guys, yeah, you're just screwing around and you've messed up and you've put all my good work to ruin. And then man says, oh, you know, F you nature, we're going to use chemicals now. If you don't want to rain, we're going to put chemicals in the sky. Yeah? Because rain is like semen. That's what Shanto said, Maharaj Shanto. He said, rain is like semen. I was thinking, oh God, what's he going to talk about now? He's really put his foot in it now, hasn't he? But it was very interesting what he said, you know. You have a seed, in order for the seed to be fertilized, you need water. Yeah? If the seed is the egg. Yeah? You can't have a seed fertilizing a seed, can you? Is an egg a seed? I don't know. But yeah, so water is a spiritual semen, isn't it? And so it rains and it gives birth to everything. It makes everything green. Yeah. And when you if rain is semen, all right, spiritual semen, then what's the same rain called when you force it to rain against its will? Is it like a cloud rape or something like that? You know, something's not right, is it? Forcing to do things against your will because what you're doing is wrong. So there's going to be recompense, you know, something's going to happen. And nature is closer to God than technology. And so what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to separate humans from nature. Create human 2.0. Create the transhuman man. Create the synthetic man, you know. Put chips in him, yeah? Not potato chips, those metal chips. Chips, yeah? Everyone's going to be chipped. Everyone's going to be given a fish and chips on a Sunday afternoon. It's going to be a world event. No, it's a metal thing they're going to put in your system, isn't it? Oh, you're a conspiracy theory. You're a conspiracy theorist, you know. You don't know what you're talking about. You're one of them. You know, conspiracy theorists have been saying this for 30 years and it hasn't yet happened. It has happened. Lots of people are chipping themselves already to get into their houses, to get into their cars. It's already happened. People do chip themselves. And with the onset of identification, because of the supercomputers and because the quantum computers are being able to crack code so quickly, they're going to need a new form of identification soon. You know, digital money needs to be protected more than ever, you know, because in the bank it can be robbed, digitally it can be robbed, on the internet it can be robbed, you know, so your money's got to be protected. And the only way to do that is to chip you, you know. You're not allowed to have money in your pocket. You know, you're not allowed to have money there. But having money in my pocket is safer than having it on the internet. Oh, we know, but you're not allowed it. Why not? Because we say so. There's no clear logical argument, but you're just not allowed to have money in your pocket anymore. Yeah, but, you know, why can't I just put the money in my pocket? Then I don't need to give you my identification. I don't need to be chipped. Yeah, and it's safer. But if I put it on the internet, there's always this threat of it being stolen. I've got to be chipped and I've got to have my DNA registered. And I don't want that. We don't care. We want you to be chipped. What flavour? Battered or non-battered? What oil do you use to chip us? So nature's being separated from humans, and as you separate humans more and more from nature, you have more and more power over humans. Yeah, you can do more and more things to humans, and they become more compliant. Okay, and so that's what's going to happen. So next time you eat your food, say thank you. Next time you pick a fruit, say thank you. You know, next time you're going to throw your garbage on the ground, be careful. Mother Nature's watching you. It's not just Big Brother, it's Big Mama.